loops it down there, and wide open. Then the ball is knocked loose. The catch is made, and then the ball is knocked out of his hand.
From Sachin Tendulkar to Virat Kohli.
You are lifting weights?
Correct. Does it not look like it?
Oh, the ball is free. Scooped up by Stroud. Circles, throws, complete on a busted play. Hutchinson.
It's Justin Herbert.
Hey, you Buzz Lightyear.
I love this shit. I'm gonna smile all day. Hey, cause it's fun when I whoop a man's ass.
All right, welcome back to the Bolts podcast. My name is Nick Cates. My pronouns, they are he and him. And the vibe around the podcasting layer this week, I would say, is positive and relaxed. Why so positive and relaxed? Well, we will get to that. We actually have 2 weeks worth of games to get to today. Let's begin with the first of those 2 games, which was a couple of Sundays ago at SoFi Stadium against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, this one was quite unfortunate. The Chargers had a 23-3 deficit at halftime. It was not without chances to have been reduced, certainly. Justin threw a key interception deep in Colts territory that I believe turned into 7. I can't remember. And there were just a number of breakdowns, especially on defense in the first half, that led to a 23-3 deficit to start out with. But the good news was, at the end of that game, that the Chargers mounted at least something of a comeback in the second half. The Chargers outscored the Colts over the last 2 quarters and put up a good enough fight that if only a couple of things would have gone differently, this could have been a very different football game. How do I know this? Well, for a start, Justin had a career high of 420 blazing passing yards, and he ended up throwing for 3 touchdowns. It was his 2 interceptions, which ended up costing the Chargers the game. As I mentioned, that key one in the first half, deep in Colts territory, was probably the worst one. Oronde Gadsden had his big breakout game. The Colts were not able to cover him at all. 7 catches for 164 yards, and the entire receiving corps looked pretty unguardable. Obviously, 420 passing yards, you'll get that. Keenan had 11 catches for 119 yards and a touchdown as well. We only had 54 yards on the ground for the offense, so the run blocking couldn't carry over the momentum from the Dolphins game. Justin led, too, with 31 yards rushing, so you don't really want your quarterback leading your rushing attack. So definitely some improvement was needed there, but the Chargers still outgained the Colts by almost 50 yards, and it was only a bunch of momentum-killing mistakes, like the aforementioned interception, that led us to only having 28 points. And we did have 6 penalties, double what the Colts had, although there was a little bit of uneven officiating in the first half. Nothing that could have really impacted the outcome, but certainly a couple of missed calls on the Colts on defense early in the first half that I think most of us who were in the stadium caught in real time. The big thing that lost this game for the Chargers ended up being really the defense. We let up fewer yards than the Colts defense, but still lost by 2 touchdowns because of an inability to get things done in important situations. All-around failure, every single position group, and Jesse Minter. We got some really, really wacky stats out of this. We did hold Jonathan Taylor, the top running back in the NFL right now, under 100 yards rushing, but we couldn't stop him from scoring 3 touchdowns. We also let up another unnecessary huge gain before the half. We saw it with the Commanders, and we saw it with the Ponies as well. They both did it to us. This time the Colts, the other Ponies, did it to us with Alec Pierce. It was a post and an out route that completely busted the match quarters coverage that Jesse Minter had called. And yeah, I put out a bunch of videos last week on our TikTok at Bolts Cricket Podcast about the pattern match coverages that Jesse Minter has been calling and how we need to see more drop coverage. We would see more drop coverage later, but in this game, not so much. The big issue was situational defense and getting things done on important plays. 3 for 3 on fourth down for the Colts. That is not good enough. And they had no respect for our defense going for it on fourth down constantly. And of course they did. They kept making the fourth down. So our defense did not do enough to make the Colts respect us. And in spite of that, in spite of all that, Daniel Jones, the Colts quarterback, still only threw for 288 yards. That didn't matter. The Chargers defense overall just wasn't good enough. And that is getting back Khalil Mack and Denzel Perryman, who, they were decent. Khalil had a sack and Denzel had 3 tackles, but it just wasn't good enough at all on defense. The Colts didn't respect us. But even with the worst defensive game of the year, and I said this to some of the people that we were sitting next to at the Vikings game, even with the worst defensive game of the year, absolute, complete failure, dumpster fire, and a lot of frustrating moments on offense, we still only lost by 2 touchdowns and easily could have been a different football game if 1 or 2 of those mistakes don't happen. So, the Chargers had a short week. That's why there was no podcast. 3 days to get everything together before hosting the Minnesota Vikings at SoFi Stadium. I had the pleasure of appearing on the Let's Skol Vikings podcast with a couple of other Chargers creators, Anthony from Can't Be Explained and Jay from the Charged Up podcast. Go follow all of them. They do great work. We had a really fun time. This was a hell of a spectacle, and even after the game has happened, I encourage you to go back and watch it. It was really entertaining. We have such similar vibes and such similar struggles, the Chargers and the Vikings. We were both trying to convince each other that our teams would lose. And in the end, the Let's Skol guys ended up being right because the Chargers ended up defeating the Vikings and doing basically a complete 180 from the Colts game. This was a massive win for the Chargers. Big confidence-building win. One that I think we had a lot of concerns going into, but the Chargers were able to capitalize on some uneven play from the Vikings that ended up being really huge. And we don't always do that, so that's really good. Let's start with the offense and Justin Herbert with another huge game, 227 yards passing with 3 touchdowns and an interception. He had really amazing pocket presence, and this was the thing that negated the constant pressure that's going to be a feature of the Brian Flores defense. He's the defensive coordinator of the Vikings. Brian Flores loves to call a lot of fire zone plays. Those involve rushing 5 guys. So with the Chargers' offensive line issues, I think us Charger fans were pretty right to be skeptical of the offensive line's ability to hold up, but Justin did such a good job with his pocket presence and with his running. He had 62 yards rushing to negate the effectiveness of that fire zone. And it was really the key thing that ended up fueling the offense. His interception was definitely a bad decision. He just threw to Ladd when he was double covered, but otherwise he was cooking all night. His best highlight was also involving Ladd. He threw a massive touchdown pass to him down the boundary. Beautiful throw. So another great game from Justin Herbert, and helped along by the entire receiving corps once again, cooking the Vikings defense. Aronde Gadsden, 5 catches, 77 yards, a touchdown. He had another massive game building on the previous one, which is, as good of a breakout as anybody could have. Ladd had 88 yards to go with that touchdown. Keenan with 44, and Trey Harris, our second-round pick, Trey Harris, first career touchdown against the Vikings, as well as some really good run blocking for Kimani Vidal, who had another huge game, built on his game against the Dolphins by tearing up the Vikings' run defense. 23 rushes for 117 yards, scored another touchdown. And I thought our run blocking was maybe not as good this game as it was against the Dolphins, but Kimani has such good balance, and he's so good at evading tackles and breaking tackles. He kind of looks like a mini Omarion. I'm pretty excited to see what they look like when Omarion comes back and is back in this rushing attack as well, which should be pretty soon. And Joe Alt returned, and the O-line pass blocking did get way better to go with Justin's really, really good pocket presence. 2 sacks and only 8 quarterback hits total. Joe Alt making a huge difference. Great to see him come back from injury, and hopefully he will be even stronger next week. To the defense, where Benjamin St. Juste and Cam Hart led the way from the secondary. St. Juste had 7 tackles. He led the Chargers with 7 tackles. Cam Hart had 4 tackles and 3 passes defensed. Both of them were really, really good. They were really effective. And R.J. Mickens, we've talked a lot about him on this channel. He had his first career interception. It was a bad throw from Carson Wentz, but that meant that R.J. Mickens was keeping his eye on the quarterback and playing deep center field, which is something that our safeties, some other people who were playing safety for the Chargers this year, have struggled with. So R.J. Mickens with an awesome first career interception. He looks like an absolute steal coming, I think, in the 6th round. What a player. I'm really excited to see what he does next. I was predicting a breakout game for him coming at some point, and I think we got it. The whole defensive line as well, 8 against the Vikings offensive line. Justin Eboigbe, last year's 4th-round pick, who we heard almost nothing from last year. He didn't play. I can't remember if he was injured or what, but we didn't hear much from him. He's been playing a lot this year, and he's been steadily improving, and what a big game he had with 2 sacks. Odafe Owe, Tuli Tuipulotu, and Khalil Mack each had a sack of their own, and I made a video a couple of days ago, check that out, on our TikTok about Odafe Owe and his impact on this defensive line, which is looking revamped and dangerous as hell. Ended up knocking Carson Wentz out of the game, and he probably should have come out of the game earlier before he did. So really, really good work from the D-line. And all this added up to only 34 rushing yards for the Vikings. After this team struggled so much against the run, to give up only 34 yards is huge, and 164 total yards. Crucial performance for this defense. Crucial to getting their confidence back. I think this is much closer to who they are than what we saw against the Colts. And I think that we can deliver this type of performance against teams like the Colts and beat them. I don't think those margins are that high. I just think that everything went wrong a couple Sundays ago. And that was nasty. But we clearly moved past it. Little bit of a damper on things before we close out the football. Unfortunately, we did have several injuries. The biggest headline of which was Derwin, who went down early in the game, didn't return, but as of today, Tuesday, when I'm recording this podcast, is practicing. So the extra mini bye, I think, did help him with the extra rest after the short week. Tony Jefferson and Tarheeb Still were both injured, and they're not practicing. I don't know. Tony definitely isn't practicing. I don't know that Still will be back. It may be a couple of weeks for him. But Dean Leonard, who played a lot of corner for the Chargers last year, I'm sure everybody will remember him, and got injured in the preseason. Dean Leonard has been designated for return, so we will have somebody up next to be able to fill in for Tarheeb. Mekhi Becton additionally did practice today along with Derwin, so hopefully he should be good to go on Sunday. And unfortunately, Uncle Will Dissly at tight end was DNP on Tuesday, so we will have to check on him. Alrighty, Chargers will be in Tennessee on Sunday to face the Titans. I look forward to watching that one. I hope we're going to get another win here, make it up to 6-3, be absolutely massive. And without any further ado, let's talk about a couple of cricket items.
Go, Chargers, go! Chargers, go! Go, go, go!
All right, to the cricket. And we can start with India's tour of Australia. We got 3 ODIs and 3 T20Is, I believe. The ODI series has been completed, and India losing the ODI series 2-1 to Australia. Arsh played and still took wickets, so I'm really happy about that. He made a couple of runs, too. Certainly good by Arsh standards, so happy to see that. And Shreyas Iyer, oh, captain, my captain, oh, making 50 yet again. So, love to see that. India were ultimately done in by that lethal combination of Mitchell Marsh, Zampa, Matt Short, Cooper Connolly, and everybody's favorite cricketers, Duckworth, Lewis, and Stern. And we will see if India is able to bounce back in the T20Is beginning tomorrow or today, depending on when I get this podcast edited. And as to the women's ODI World Cup, we have semifinals. The league stage has been completed. We have 4 semifinal teams. Those are England, South Africa, India, and Australia. Tomorrow morning at 2:30 a.m. local time, we have the first semifinal between England and South Africa. And this is a rematch of one of the earliest matches in this tournament, which was absolutely lopsided. And we hope it's not going to be necessarily headed that way again, as South Africa are not enjoying the same form they did earlier in the tournament. And they lost big to Australia in their previous match, with England continuing in good form. And the second semifinal is likely to be more competitive. That is India versus Australia. The previous match was won by Australia, but with only 6 balls remaining. Australia are undefeated, though. They are the best team in this tournament so far. India have the skill, but will need to overcome some of their inconsistent form. Won the first 2, lost their next 2. It was kind of inconsistent from the Indian team. So this, I feel like, maybe could be the real final, especially if England beat South Africa. I know that England beat India as well, but India went to England and beat the crap out of England earlier this summer. So I definitely rate India's chances pretty highly against England if they make the final. And obviously, if Australia continues their winning form, I'm not betting against them to lose anybody. They could have a completely undefeated tournament. So we will have to watch and see what ends up coming of that. But you know who was undefeated last night with 2 doubles, 2 home runs, and 11 billion walks, and will have something to say about the potential undefeatedness of the Australian women's team, is, of course, next week's guest, the one, the only, Mr. Shohei Ohtani, straight out of the World Series. So, for Ariane Ori, RJ Mickens, and everybody else associated with the NFL's 4077th team, my name is Nick Cates, and I'm saying, well,
I've got so much to say and so little time to say it. Great job, everybody. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!